Well, hello and welcome, my friends, to this Sports Insiders The Spin. I'm Ali Melendez. Now, we're just days away from week 1 of the college football season, and we talked about it in our last show, friends, realignment. Whatever you think of the growing super conferences, the fact of the matter is we're going to see some amazing matchups every single week. And that's not a bad thing, right? Now, no conference will experience more of that change than the Big Ten, where blue chip programs USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon enter their first year in the conference. And what is sure to be an incredible season. So here now to take a look at the new look Big Ten, along with the ACC. Hey, we have not forgotten about you guys, don't worry. Our very own Drew Butler and Gabe Ikard. Welcome, fellas.
Thanks so much, Ali. Yes, indeed. We are 1 week closer to the start of the college football season. Welcome into Sports Insiders. It's The Spin. We're breaking down college football. Drew Butler joined alongside Gabe Ikard, and we're taking a look at the ACC and the Big Ten this week. Gabe, these conferences are certainly going to have a different look in 2024. Let's start with the ACC. A couple of newcomers here from out west, Stanford and Cal from Texas Southern Methodist. They are joining the fray in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and there's going to be a great opportunity for some teams to make their first college football playoff. Who do you like, Gabe, out of the ACC to make the college football playoff for the first time?
Clemson and Florida State are out.
Yep.
Miami at plus 170 is going to be a popular pick, but I'm looking for a little more value.
Okay.
Give me Louisville at plus 500.
Wow.
To make the college football playoff. I know NC State and Virginia Tech are getting more offseason buzz than Louisville, but they've got a lot of pieces back on that defense that played for an ACC championship a year ago. And if Tyler Shutt can just stay healthy, I expect Jeff Brom to get the most out of him and the most out of that offense. So I like the value there. Give me Louisville.
That's a sneaky pick. Plus 500, great value. Jeff Brom, of course, a great head coach as well. Louisville has a nice home field advantage, and people forget they made it to the ACC championship game a year ago and, of course, lost a close one to Florida State. You mentioned Miami might be a popular pick, and that's where I am looking. I'm taking the Miami Hurricanes, plus 170 right now over at BetOnline to make the college football playoff. Why do I like Miami? Well, they have an elite transfer quarterback in Cam Ward, coming down to Coral Gables from Pullman, Washington, in Washington State, just about the furthest away you could get from Pullman. He's going into his 5th year. This is a guy who's got a ton of experience in college football, and there are 9 returning starters on offense in total. Here's another key thing about the Miami Hurricanes. They do not play Clemson this year. No Clemson on the schedule. They also get Florida State at home, which might be their toughest game all season long. Can Mario Cristobal, the head coach, stay out of his own way? A couple of boneheaded, head-scratching coaching decisions that have actually cost them games in his first 2 years as the head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. You like Louisville. That could be another one of their toughest games. The Hurricanes have to go on the road to Louisville October 19th. They have a test of an opener as well against those pesky Florida Gators, a great rivalry kind of being reborn. So a new look ACC. I think Miami Hurricanes with Cam Ward at the helm make their first ever college football playoff, plus 170 right now at BetOnline. All right, let's turn our attention to the Big Ten. And yes, the Big Ten is going to look different as well. Bunch of teams from the West Coast joining, which is just pretty interesting to say. Oregon and Washington, USC, UCLA. Gabe, who do you think makes their first ever college football playoff out of the Big Ten?
Penn State feels like the obvious choice, which is why I'm not taking it. I'm looking for value here. Give me the Iowa Hawkeyes at plus 650 to make the college football playoff. And here's why. We know one thing about Kurt Ferentz's football team. They're going to play good defense.
Of course.
And if you play elite defense, you're going to have a chance in a lot of football games. You look at Iowa's schedule, they only have one game against a team that is ranked in the preseason AP top 25, and that's against Ohio State.
Wow.
If they can put together a great defense and be less of a dumpster fire on offense than they were a year ago, then you could be looking at a possible 10-2 season for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Wow. I respect the physicality and what that program is built upon, and I think they've got to be better on offense. So give me that value with Iowa at plus 650 to make the playoff.
Gabe Ikard in his bag to start off this week's episode of Sports Insiders, going plus 500 ACC Louisville, plus 650 Big Ten Iowa to make the playoff. I do love that pick. If Kirk Ferentz can find some offense on that Iowa Hawkeyes football team. Also, you got to remember, no more divisions in the Big Ten, which could hurt Iowa because they were often in the weaker, atop the weaker Big Ten West. And it could help the team that I like. You mentioned Penn State, a public pick. Yeah, I guess I'm going chalk on the first two picks to make the college football playoff. I love the Penn State Nittany Lions, minus 150 right now at BetOnline to make the college football playoff. The 12-team playoff, Gabe, was made for programs like Penn State. And James Franklin has got to get the Nittany Lions into the college football playoff. Imagine this. A home college football playoff game in Happy Valley, December 20th, maybe against a Tennessee, maybe against an Ole Miss, some blue blood brands, December, Penn State, Happy Valley. That sounds pretty good. Sign me up for that. Penn State also avoids Michigan on the schedule. They get Ohio State at home on November 2nd. And how about this offense? Drew Aller, their quarterback, returning. Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, high-powered backfield. This is it for Penn State. You got to prove it. James Franklin, minus 150 Penn State to make the college football playoff. All right, let's go back to the ACC. Take a look at the BetOnline odds board to see who we like to win the conference. Gabe, who's your ACC champion prediction?
I'm going with Florida State. I just think that Mike Norvell and that staff, they've done a great job of building that roster through recruiting, through the transfer portal. Don't get me wrong. They've got to replace a lot. And that conversation starts with Jordan Travis at the quarterback position. But I think DJ Uiagalelei is going to be solid for them. I'm not worried about him and what he's going to bring to that offense. I think that defensive line, they lost some really, really good players, but I think they still have a lot of talent on that group, and I think they're going to be better than a lot of people think. Also, they get Clemson in Tallahassee.
Right.
They've got to go on the road to Miami, but Hard Rock Stadium doesn't exactly have the best reputation of being a tough place to play. It's not exactly the harshest road environment in college football. So I'm going with the Noles. I really like the way that Norvell has built that program up.
Back-to-back ACC champs, Gabe Ikard taking the Florida State Seminoles as his preseason ACC champion prediction. I'm going with Clemson, plus 375 right now to be the ACC champion over at BetOnline. And it's a prove-it year for James Franklin and Penn State. It's also a big-time prove-it year for Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers, led by returning quarterback Cade Klubnik. There's 8 other returning starters on the offensive side of the ball, and the schedule is relatively light. Yeah, that neutral site opener against Georgia shouldn't matter in the grand scheme of things for an ACC championship run. And yes, they're going to have to go against their former quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, at Florida State in Tallahassee, October 5th. I'm a little bit more skeptical on DJU in Tallahassee. Yeah, he was not very good at Clemson, kind of revived his career out west at Oregon State. Now he comes back into the ACC. I think Clemson should have his number, and I mentioned it. It's a big, big year for Dabo Swinney, a guy who's been reluctant to adapt to the new era of college football. No transfers, none of that new stuff. He's trusting his team. And you better believe the fans, the supporters, the alumni are questioning, is this the right way to go about it? Clemson is favored in all but 2 games heading into this season. Of course, underdogs in that opener against Georgia and slighter underdogs on the road against the Seminoles in Tallahassee. So Clemson right now looking like a good value play as the ACC champion. Can Cade Klubnik and that offense really lead the Tigers? You know, their defense will always be pretty solid. I like the Clemson Tigers plus 375 to win the ACC. All right, Big Ten, new look. Those West Coast teams are getting involved. Gabe, who's your preseason Big Ten prediction to win the conference?
I can get the defending national champs at plus 800.
Oh,
give me the Michigan Wolverines under new head coach Sharon Moore. Yes, new coach, new quarterback, a bunch of new offensive linemen. I get it. I get why people are skeptical. You've got the investigation still going on, but they have dominated the Big Ten, and they have dominated Ohio State the last 3 seasons. That defense for Michigan, that defensive line led by Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant,
big time.
That group is going to be nasty.
Oh, yeah.
absolutely nasty. And I think that defense has a chance to be better than it was a year ago. We'll see what happens with the quarterback position, but I know that they develop players as well as any program in college football. So if you're going to give me plus 800 for Michigan, I'm taking it. I get it. I know Ohio State is loaded. They're all in. Oregon coming into the conference, they're really talented, but I love the value with Sharon Moore's Michigan team at it plus 800.
You're taking my approach from me, Gabe. I'm usually the one who gives these big bomb plays heading into the season, and now you're just teeing me up for my actual picks. We haven't even traded notes yet. You mentioned Ohio State's loaded. Yes, they are. And right now at BetOnline, the Ohio State Buckeyes are plus 135 to win the Big Ten championship, and that's where I'm going. I'm sorry to do this. Close your eyes. Look the other way. Yes, it's chalk, but they have a true embarrassment of riches on their roster. It almost looks like a super team that's been compiled in the NBA. We've come to kind of get accustomed to that. But think about some of these transfer players. Quarterback Will Howard coming in from Kansas State. Running back Quinshon Judkins, who was one of the best players in the SEC a year ago from Ole Miss. Oh, yeah, they still have Travion Henderson. They still have Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith at the wide receiver position. How about Caleb Downs, freshman All-American a year ago from Alabama? He now transfers in to lead this Ohio State Buckeyes offense. Ryan Day, the head coach himself, knows it's win or go home this year. They've been very, very vocal about how much they've invested in this team through NIL to do one thing: get past Michigan. It's make or break for the program. I think everybody understands the pressure. They've got their hand in the pile, Gabe. They've got all the tools around them. It's going to come down to that last game of the regular season against Michigan to get into that Big Ten championship and then make a push for a national championship. Ohio State Buckeyes plus 135 to win the Big Ten. Let's go to some win totals and wrap this thing up. In the ACC, Gabe, who do you like for their over-under on this season's win total?
I'm going with the Miami Hurricane for over 9.5 wins at plus 150. It's possible that Miami is the most talented team in the ACC. When you look at the blue chip ratio of all the teams in the league, only Clemson has a higher blue chip ratio than Miami. And this is really me just taking a gamble on Cam Ward.
Yeah.
And him being their first true difference maker at the quarterback position in I don't know how long. You mentioned earlier, Drew, Mario Cristobal, the game management decisions over the last couple of years have not been great. I'm gonna choose to believe that those get ironed out.
Yeah.
That they figured it out in the offseason. But this is really about Cam Ward and what I think he can be at the quarterback position for Miami. So I'm going over 9.5 wins for Miami at plus 150.
No, I totally agree. Obviously, Miami was my team to make the first college football playoff, obviously their first college football playoff. And in regards to Mario Cristobal, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. We got to get over the hump with Mario Cristobal. So I would agree with you. He lives and learns from some of those past mistakes heading in to his third year. I love Georgia Tech over 5 wins. It pays plus 100 at BetOnline. Second year under head coach Brent Key. Again, Brent Key, an alumni from Georgia Tech. And the Yellow Jackets have had tons of momentum this offseason, specifically on the recruiting trail. And remember, Haynes King, the quarterback, he's returning. Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator, who had plenty of opportunities to move up in the coaching ranks around the country. He declined those. He's staying on the flats in Atlanta. I think they beat Florida State in the season opener, okay? I really do. In Dublin, they're a double-digit dog. Check out that one. That money line play could be worth some pizza money. And if they do beat Florida State in that home opener, it will tremendously help them get over that season win total of just 5. Going back to a year ago, the Yellow Jackets played ranked teams very tough. Plenty to build on this season. A lot of returning starters. I love Georgia Tech over 5 wins this season, plus 100. Finally, Gabe, Big Ten. Let's look at a win total in the new look Big Ten Conference. Where are you going?
I'm taking Oregon under 10.5 wins.
Wow. Okay.
And you can get that at minus 115. New conference, not familiar with the teams, some long travel. I look at Dylan Gabriel and that offense. Can you really expect it to be better than what Bo Nix did a year ago for the Ducks? I think that's certainly a question, but it's difficult when you're not familiar with the teams, and going 11-1 with their schedule is not easy because it's got Ohio State and Michigan on it. I just feel like 10-2 would be a heck of a season for Dan Lanning, and I know their roster, it's loaded, but 10-2 just seems more likely than 11-1 to me. I think we're all going to have to adjust our expectations about what a successful season is in college football with these super conferences that we've got. I think a few years from now, 10-2 will be like, oh my gosh, what a tremendous season.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to take under 10.5 wins for Oregon in their first year in the Big Ten Conference.
Yeah, it's going to be different. And you mentioned it with great perspective. That travel all season long, that's going to be a grind for those student athletes and the coaching staff on that football team. I'm also looking towards one of the newcomers in the Big Ten. I'm taking the Washington Huskies over 6.5 wins this season, pays -105 at BetOnline. And yes, this will be a much different looking team after a national championship appearance just a year ago. No more head coach Kalen DeBoer. No more quarterback Michael Penix Jr. No more elite wide receiver in Rome Odunze. However, they do get a transfer quarterback with tons of experience, Will Rogers, coming up to the Pacific Northwest from Mississippi State, and Jed Fish, the new head coach at Washington from Arizona, a guy who's built programs, a guy who can definitely scheme up some offense, all the success he had with Noah Fafita at Arizona a year ago in the Pac-12. And take a look at their schedule. A very easy start to the schedule here. There's only 5 returning starters in total, Game. That gives me a little bit of pause, but they should get off to a 4-0, 5-0 start and then just have to string together a couple of wins to get over that 6.5 mark. I trust the Washington Huskies to do just that. So I like Washington over 6.5 wins, -105 right now at BetOnline. It's almost here, Gabe. We're just 1 week away from the start of the college football season. We're going to have everybody locked in all season long right here on The Spin at Sports Insiders. For Gabe Ikard, I'm Drew Butler. Allie, we'll throw it back to you.
Oh my gosh, amazing stuff as always. I want to do the best. Our very own Drew Butler and Gabe Ikard here to break down everything we need to know about the college football season. So once again, shout out to them. Be sure to head on over to sportsinsider.com to find all the latest college football odds, news, and info, as well as pretty much everything you need in the sports betting world. We'll see you next time, friends, right here on The Spin.